It's strange. I didn't go to my first horror convention until maybe 2003, when one started in the Philadelphia area called Monster Mania. Growing up on the East Coast, obviously I was always hip to Chiller, which was in the North Jersey, New York area. It used to advertise constantly in Fangoria magazine, and in the early days of dial-up internet, it was always on horror websites. It was always the banner and stuff like that, and it always had a cool selection of guests. Between horror people and old TV people and old rock stars and stuff like that. But it wasn't until 2003 when the one came to the Philly area where I went to my first horror convention. And I remember the big guest was Kane Hodder. And I stood in line for a really long time to meet Kane Hodder. And then we would go to them consistently, and it became like a thing, and you'd get a hotel room and all that kind of stuff. And there was always a cool selection of people, and you'd see a lot of the same people over and over again, but you'd start to get to know people. Sid Haig was always at them, and Felicia Rose was always at them, and that was always cool. And the autographs and the collectibles, like you look around my apartment, it's nothing but old horror movie stuff, and a lot of that came from years of going to different horror conventions. And then when I started doing the YouTube stuff, then I became on the other end of it. Now I'm a guest at conventions. And when he got into filmmaking stuff as well, like it was weird that people like came to meet me and because I'm nobody, but there, we went to some of these cons and like people actually showed up with stuff for us to sign. And it was very bizarre to me because I was like, right over there is like Alex Vincent from Child's Play, and right over there is Conrad Brooks from Plan 9 from Outer Space. I remember like meeting him and meeting Candice Hillgross from Carnival of Souls, and like my mind being blown that I could go and meet these people who I'd seen in movies a zillion times over and over again, or Robert Englund and people like that. It's like, oh, they're right fucking there. And then people came up to us to meet us, and you go and you sit behind a booth all day, and I love watching the different types of people who go to conventions as well. Like I love when there's like little kids dressed as as like Leatherface and stuff like that. It's funny, the horror community is great in that regard, because I remember growing up, I'm 42 years old, and I remember horror being kind of like a dirty word, like if you watched horror, you were weird. And I remember, like, again, Fangoria magazine, I remember going to like the bookstore or going to like a magazine shop and like reading it, but feeling like I was like reading Hustler magazine. Like people were going to be staring at me for reading, this thing that has like, Ringu on the cover or Wolfit on the cover or whatever was out at that time, and just being like, oh no, not me, like put another magazine in front of it or something like that. So you had your other little fucking punk rock friends who were into Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th and Phantasm and all that kind of stuff, and we would go out of our way to rent VHS tapes, and we had our own little secret language because we had seen all this shit, and we were horror nerds growing up. I told the story before on my own YouTube channel, Schlock and All Films, about like finding out from a dude about Faces of Death and thinking like this is the moment we become men. This is our Vietnam. And riding our bikes like 2 towns over in 1993. Like imagine nowadays, like kids being allowed to do that, but now it doesn't matter because even with the VHS stuff, like everything is at your fingertips right now. And we had to like hunt for things like we were fucking horror movie archaeologists or some shit, and like paying a dude leaving the 7-Eleven to go in and rent us Face of Death and getting it home and popping it in the VCR and thinking like this is the moment, when we're never going to forget this. And we didn't forget it. It just was not what we thought it was going to be. But because some dude kept the kayfabe to bring it on to us, we kept the kayfabe to the next kids that we told about, and so on and so forth. And I found out that like that was like a thing all over that kids did, and that was the cool thing about going to horror conventions. There was a point to that story. It was all coming back around. That like you find out in the age of the internet and in the age of going to these cons and like that you weren't alone. And you, I mean, you were. I was weird, you know, but you weren't weird. The other people were into the same nonsense that you were into, you know. And that was really really cool and eye opening for me, because you for so long you feel like, you know, like, oh, I'm the only person who knows this crap. And then you go like, oh shit, one of us, one of us. And that was kind of that's my favorite thing about the horror conventions, is always seeing a broad swath of people who are into the same nonsense that you're into, even the most like obscure shit that you can think of. There's probably some chubby dude with a beard walking around wearing that fucking t-shirt, you know. And that's kind of my favorite thing about it. And then parents passing it on to their kids. Yeah, I don't know. I've always been, I don't have any kids. I have a cat, and she's lazy and laying right here at my feet. But I just love going and being around people who are just happy to be there. You know, they're happy to revel in the presence of other weirdos like them. And you know, and the horror community is a tight fucking knit community, man. It's you know, it's a lot of different genders and sexualities and body types and everything all kind of mixed together. People who all felt like they were weirdos and outsiders can all kind of find something when they're in a place like that. And I've always enjoyed that. And very, like, for the first time I went to one, I was like, oh wow, like this is eye-opening, you know. And the more and more I go to them, and the more you see the same people, and there's these little communities of people. You know, you have people having hotel parties, and you're just wandering down the hall from your room, and you get invited into a room, and now you're in there, and you know, Doug Bradley's in there for some reason. I remember one time I'm hanging out, and Angela Bettis and I were playing. Somebody brought like Nintendo 64, and we were playing Nintendo 64 in this hotel room. You wouldn't get that anywhere else, you know. We were just in Ohio a couple weekends ago, and got taken out for drinks by some of the guests at that, or you know, and as I've gone on, I've made movies and stuff like that, and I've been involved in other things. You know, some of the people I've worked with invite us over to come hang out, and they introduce us to people. And I'm not a clout chaser person. Like, cool, nice to meet you, you know. I saved Kane Hodder, the very first autograph I ever got from a horror person's bag. I was a guest at a horror con in Detroit, and the Uber driver or whatever put his bag down and started wheeling away, and I chased after it, and I grabbed it, and later on that night he thanked me for it. I was like, that's pretty fucking cool. It's all, you know, comes full circle. So I love the horror community. You know, I know they get a bad rap. I know, and trust me, I know that there's a couple in there you just go like, you know, but for the most part, I like being around people who are just, you know, when they're in that space. Horror fans usually aren't hiding what they're into. You meet a horror fan and you pretty much know right away that they're a horror fan. You know, but I like when they're in that space and they can be who they are, and who they wish they could be every day. And that's really cool, and something that I find special about that entire community. And you know, anytime I can go to one as a guest or just go as a patron, I try to, because I'm always on the lookout for weird memorabilia, or maybe there's like an actor or something like that I want to meet. In the other room here, I have a ton of framed autographs and stuff like that that I've gotten over the years from people. And no, it's cool. Again, when are you gonna have a chance to meet some of these people and tell them how much they meant to you? You know, I got to meet one of the biggest smiles on my face I ever had is I finally went to Chiller in 2021, and you know, my life had completely fallen apart. I had a complete and total nervous breakdown, lost all my friends, I lost my credibility, everything. And I was like, you know, I'm gonna go. I've never been before, maybe this will get me out of my head. And Dracula from the 1971 Al Adamson, Sam Sherman, Dracula versus Frankenstein was there. He was promoting a comic book that two other friends of mine have made, and Steve Stelly and Dexter Weeks. And so they introduced me to him, and I just had the biggest fucking smile on my face you could ever possibly imagine. And it's so silly to even think that, because I've met some famous fucking people in my life, like from all the years of doing different jobs and shit like that, and I've never really been. I'd be like, ooh, that's cool, that's that person. Um, but it's never. I've never had the kind of smile on my face when I met fucking Dracula, because and like he's like, I don't understand. It's a garbage movie, and I was like, sure, it is, but back in the early 2000s when I was going through my cancer treatment, I would watch that movie on repeat. I had a little mini DVD player with a screen built into it, this little white one. The battery died so fucking fast. And I had the trauma release of Dracula versus Frankenstein. I would watch it constantly. So he became my favorite, not the best Dracula, but my favorite Dracula because of that situation. And I got to meet him, and I just thanked him so fucking much. He's like, I didn't do anything. I was like, no, but you did, like that's what these people don't get. There's a lot of fucking weirdos who go and meet celebrities and make them uncomfortable and stuff like that. But a lot of this stuff, like kids who gravitate towards horror, a lot of times it's kids who don't come from the best upbringing and homes. At least that's from me. There was a lot of childhood trauma and stuff like that, and I gravitated towards the monsters. My therapist thinks it's funny. I'm getting very open with everyone right now. That there was a lot of some bad things happened to me when I was a kid, and subconsciously I used the monsters as a kind of defense mechanism. That I was always imagined Jason would be there to protect me. The Wolfman would be there to protect me. Frankenstein's monster would be there to protect me. They never killed kids. They never hurt kids. My dryer's done. My clothes are done. You guys are getting the real experience. There's shit going on. Like, there's so much stuff goes on outside of my apartment here. It's like I live in a Walmart parking lot. But a lot of these people, these characters symbolize some kind of strength in them, or it helped them get through situations. And when they get to meet these people, and if it wasn't for these types of shows, they wouldn't get to meet these people and express to them what they meant to them in their childhood and in their formidable years. And maybe there's gay kids who gravitated towards a certain character and they felt acceptance there or whatever. It's all this stuff, and that's what makes that's why I feel the horror community is so different and so special when it comes to the worlds of fandom. And and did that answer your question about going to horror shows?